It's 1968. The sound you hear isn't subtle. It's a sharp, metallic bark echoing off concrete walls as a Pontiac V8 snaps to life. The idle is rough, angry, almost impatient. There's a mechanical urgency to it, a hunger. This isn't a big block monster. It isn't a Ram Air legend. And yet, it scares the people standing around it, because this engine was never supposed to exist like this. Most people think they know Pontiac's performance story. The 389, the 400, the 455, the Ram Airs, the judges, the legends that built reputations and won races. But almost nobody talks about the 350 HO. It doesn't get poster space. It doesn't get movie cameos. It doesn't get the respect it earned. And that's exactly why this story matters. Because buried under badges, insurance rules, and corporate politics is an engine that quietly embarrassed bigger motors and scared Pontiac's own executives so badly they helped kill it. This is the shocking truth behind Pontiac's 350 HO and why it disappeared almost as soon as it proved how good it really was. To understand why the 350 HO even existed, you have to understand the war Pontiac was fighting in the late 1960s. It wasn't just about building fast cars. It was about survival. Muscle cars were exploding in popularity. Every manufacturer wanted a piece of the action. Horsepower numbers were climbing fast. Magazine covers screamed about the latest cubic inch wars. But behind the glossy photos and tire smoke, something else was climbing too. Insurance premiums. If you were a young buyer under 25 years old, purchasing a 400 or 428 could triple your insurance costs overnight. Some policies wouldn't even cover certain high-performance models. Dealers across the country were losing young buyers. The very customers who wanted muscle cars the most couldn't afford to insure them. Pontiac saw the problem clearly. They watched sales slip away. They heard the frustration from dealerships. They understood that horsepower didn't matter if buyers couldn't afford to drive off the lot. They needed a loophole. In 1968, GM's internal rules and the insurance industry's formulas tied risk and performance perception heavily to engine displacement. Bigger engine meant bigger danger, bigger premiums. Smaller engine, lower insurance, on paper at least. Pontiac engineers realized something dangerous, something that probably should have stayed in a backroom conversation. What if they built a small engine that wasn't actually small in spirit? What if they took the lessons learned from building monsters and packed them into something that looked tame? That question lit the fuse. The Pontiac 350 wasn't supposed to be special. When it was introduced in 1968, it was designed as a short-stroke cousin of the proven 400, a utility engine, a sensible choice for buyers who wanted Pontiac reliability without Pontiac performance prices. Same basic block architecture, same 10.230-inch deck height, same bore spacing that Pontiac had refined over years of racing and street development, but with a 3.88-inch bore and a shorter 3.75-inch stroke, it displaced 350 cubic inches instead of 400. On the surface, it looked like a step backward. Less displacement, less torque potential, less excitement. Most automakers would have stopped there, slapped a badge on it, called it a day, sold it to commuters and fleet buyers. Pontiac didn't. What they did next turned a mild small V8 into something else entirely, something that would haunt boardrooms and thrill backroad racers for years to come. The 350 HO, short for high output, borrowed heavily from Pontiac's bigger performance engines. This wasn't a marketing exercise. This wasn't badge engineering. This was real, serious hardware transplanted from proven race-winning platforms. It started with the camshaft. The 350 HO ran a high-lift camshaft similar to the 068 grind used in 400 HO engines. Advertised duration sat around 288 degrees, with aggressive lift that let the engine breathe hard once you pushed it above 4,000 RPM. This wasn't an economy cam designed to maximize fuel mileage. This was a performance grind that woke the engine up when you put your foot down. Then there were the heads. Instead of restrictive economy castings designed to meet cost targets, The 350 HO used high-flow big valve cylinder heads. Often, these were the exact same casting numbers found on larger displacement Pontiacs. The engineering team wasn't cutting corners. They were building a real performance engine. Intake valves measured 2.11 inches in diameter. Exhaust valves came in at 1.77 inches. Those are not small engine numbers. Those are numbers you'd expect to find on engines 50 or 100 cubic inches larger. The airflow potential was massive for the displacement, and compression, a healthy 10.5-to-1 ratio, high for the era. Borderline aggressive on pump gas even back then. You needed premium fuel to keep it happy. But when you fed it right, it rewarded you with every ounce of performance the engineering team had packed inside. The Rochester Quadrajet 4-barrel carburetor sat on top, feeding the beast. Exhaust flowed through cast iron manifolds that, while not perfect, still allowed the engine to breathe well enough to make serious power. On paper, Pontiac rated the 1968 350 HO at 320 horsepower and 380 lb-ft of torque. Those numbers already looked good for a 350 cubic inch engine. Competitive? Respectable. But anyone who's spent time around these engines will tell you the truth. Those numbers were conservative, deliberately so. On engine dynos, with a free-flowing exhaust and proper tuning, many 350 HOs pushed well beyond their factory rating. Some estimates from the era put real output closer to 340 horsepower. A few optimistic builders claimed even higher numbers with minor modifications. From 350 cubic inches, that's nearly 1 horsepower per cubic inch. In 1968, with heavy iron heads, with a cast iron block, with a factory warranty still attached, that ratio was supposed to belong to exotic sports cars, Italian machines with price tags that matched, not American muscle that you could buy at your local Pontiac dealer on a middle-class salary. But power wasn't the whole story. The real shock was how this engine behaved on the street. Because of the shorter stroke, the 350 HO revved cleaner and faster than Pontiac's larger motors. The rotating assembly didn't have to travel as far. The engine felt eager instead of lazy. Where a 400 liked to surge forward on torque, relying on brute force, the 350 HO pulled hard and smooth all the way past 5,500 RPM. It didn't just have power, it had personality. In lightweight cars like the Firebird, it felt alive. Every blip of the throttle got an instant response. No hesitation, no bog, just immediate savage acceleration that pinned you back in the seat and made you grin. Drivers noticed, racers noticed. Word started spreading through local drag strips and backroad meetups, and insurance companies didn't notice, at least not at first. In a 1969 Firebird equipped with a 4-speed manual transmission and a 3.90 rear gear ratio, the 350 HO could run the quarter mile in the low 14-second range. Some owners, the ones who knew how to launch and had sticky tires, reported high 13s with good traction. Trap speeds hovered around 100 miles per hour. That was deep into big block territory. Cars with 400 and 428 engines were running similar numbers. Cars that cost more. Cars that ate more fuel. Cars that crushed insurance budgets. And here was this unassuming 350, running with the big dogs and asking fewer questions at the insurance office. Then came the real tests. Put a 350 HO next to a base 400 in identical cars. On paper, the 400 should win. Every time. More displacement, more torque, bigger reputation. The laws of physics seemed clear, but on the street, on the highway, on the drag strip, in real-world driving, especially at speeds above 60 mph, the 350 HO often stayed right with the bigger engine. Sometimes it even pulled ahead. That shorter stroke advantage kept paying dividends at high RPM, where the 400 started to run out of breath. That made people uncomfortable. Pontiac dealers started whispering about it in back offices. Mechanics who worked on both engines started swapping stories over coffee. Racing teams started paying attention. One Pontiac engineer was quoted internally as saying something that probably should have stayed private. We accidentally built a street racer that looks like a commuter. And that's where the problems began, because GM didn't like accidents like that. By 1969, the muscle car market was overheating in more ways than one. Insurance companies were catching on to the games manufacturers were playing. Emissions regulations were looming on the horizon. Safety advocates were gaining political traction. And inside GM, there was a strict hierarchy that nobody was supposed to challenge. Chevrolet owned the small block performance crown. The 327, the 350, those were Chevy's territory. Pontiac was supposed to rule the big engines, the 400s, the 455s, the Ram Air Monsters. That was the division of power. That was how the corporate family worked. The 350 HO blurred that line. Worse, it did it too well, too publicly, too successfully. Pontiac had essentially created a high-revving, small-displacement performance engine that challenged GM's carefully maintained internal politics. It made Chevrolet's small-block offerings look less special. It gave young buyers a clear path around insurance penalties. And it hinted at a future where smart engineering and efficient design beat raw displacement. GM wasn't ready for that future. The executives in Detroit liked their categories neat. They liked their brand identities clear. They didn't like a Pontiac engine embarrassing the corporate structure. So the screws tightened. For 1969, the 350 HO returned. Still rated at 320 horsepower. Still potent, still dangerous on the street. But behind the scenes, changes were already being planned. Engineers were getting memos. Specifications were being questioned. Cam profiles were being softened for future years. Compression ratios were being eyed nervously by executives worried about emissions compliance. Exhaust restrictions started creeping in. The freedom that created the 350 HO was being slowly revoked. Then came 1970, the year everything changed. On paper, 1970 should have been the 350 HO's crowning moment. Pontiac was at the absolute peak of its performance era. The Firebird Trans Am debuted with aggressive styling that screamed performance. Magazine covers celebrated muscle. The market loved horsepower. But regulations were closing in fast. New emissions standards forced manufacturers to lower compression ratios. Cleaner combustion meant less power. Insurance companies began using power-to-weight ratios instead of just displacement to calculate premiums. The loophole that created the 350 HO was closing. Pontiac revised the 350 HO for 1970. Compression dropped slightly, hovering closer to 10 to 1. Horsepower ratings fell to around 315. Still strong, still respectable compared to the competition, but the edge was dulled. The magic that made the engine special was being slowly bled away by forces outside the engineering department's control. And then, it was gone. By 1971, the 350 HO badge disappeared entirely. In its place came watered-down variants designed to survive emissions testing and run on the new regular unleaded fuel that was becoming the standard. Compression ratios crashed to the mid-8s. Camshafts shrank. Power output collapsed almost overnight. The vibrant, aggressive engine that scared executives and embarrassed bigger motors became just another strangled V8 trying to meet federal requirements. Pontiac's engineers knew what was happening. They watched it happen, and they couldn't stop it. One former Pontiac engineer, interviewed years later, said something that captured the heartbreak perfectly. We went from building engines we were proud of to building engines we were told to apologize for. The 350 HO didn't die because it was bad. It didn't die because customers rejected it. It didn't die because it failed on the street or the track. It died because it was too good at the wrong time. Today, the legacy of the Pontiac 350 HO is strange and bittersweet. It doesn't have the fame of the Ram Air 4. It doesn't command the auction prices of a 455 Super Duty. It doesn't get featured in documentaries or celebrated at major car shows. Many people don't even know it existed. But among those who do, it's quietly respected, deeply appreciated, spoken about with a knowing nod. Survivor cars with original 350 HO engines are genuinely rare today. Production numbers were never huge to begin with. Many engines were swapped out for bigger motors by owners chasing more power. Others were raced hard until they gave up. Some simply wore out from decades of use and neglect. Finding a numbers-matching 350 HO Firebird today is like finding a secret that somehow escaped history. A time capsule of what Pontiac engineering could achieve when the rules bent just enough. And when you hear one run, you understand immediately. The crisp throttle response. The clean, eager revs. The way it pulls without drama or hesitation. It doesn't feel like a muscle car from the 1960s. It feels like a preview. A glimpse of what Pontiac could have become if emissions regulations and corporate politics hadn't stepped in to kill the momentum. A future where smart airflow, efficient combustion, and balanced design mattered more than cubic inches. A future we never got to see. So here's the real truth about the Pontiac 350 HO. It wasn't a compromise engine. It wasn't an economy motor with a fancy badge slapped on the air cleaner for marketing purposes. It wasn't a half-measure design to fill a gap in the brochure. It was a calculated, borderline rebellious piece of engineering. A small engine built with big intentions by engineers who understood that displacement wasn't everything. That smart design could beat brute force. That a well-built 350 could run with a lazy 400 and win. And for a brief, shining moment in automotive history, it worked. It slipped past the gatekeepers. It fooled the insurance adjusters. It embarrassed bigger engines on the street and the strip. It proved that Pontiac's engineering team knew exactly what they were doing. And then it vanished. Not because it failed. Not because buyers didn't want it, but because it scared the wrong people. Because it threatened the corporate order. Because it showed what was possible when engineers stopped following the rules. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Pontiac's most underrated and overlooked engines, let me know in the comments what story you want to hear next. Another forgotten V8 that deserved better. Another corporate secret that got buried. Or another machine that was simply too good for its own time. And make sure to subscribe because there are a lot more stories like this hiding just under the surface, waiting to be told.